All right, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started, and as people trickle in, that's not a problem. Thank you for coming tonight. Tonight we've requested the department directors and key division staff or key division managers to prepare a brief 5 to 10 minute presentation to inform all of you about the department's role or the division's role in the city, their current program capacity, and existing programs and projects. They are prepared to answer general questions following their presentations. So let me talk a little bit about the format for the evening. As I said, it's 5 to 10 minute presentations depending upon the department or the division. A 10-minute Q&A will follow every 2 to 3 presentations for just general questions. And please try to keep those questions specific to the presenters that just presented. Also, due to the filming of the meeting, we're going to ask that you go to the podium to ask questions so that the audio gets picked up on the filming. Please plan to ask one question at a time. If you have multiple questions, just get back in line after you've asked your previous question. As you probably have been informed, more specific questions around ideas may be filtered through either the 4 staff that are on the bottom of your agenda or directly through your facilitator. You will have another opportunity to sit down with department directors and division managers, I believe in June, to ask more specific project-related questions. All right, with that, I'm going to ask our city manager, Dan Keene, to come up and provide a presentation. And then following him, we have our chief assistant city attorney, Donna Mooney.
Thank you. Good evening. It's great to see all of you here. And, as a project that is supported out of the city manager's office, this is a project that we follow real closely. All of the city PB staff sit right outside my office door, so I spend a lot of time listening to and hearing what's going on. And I know that, this year we've got a lot of people involved in this project, and that is just fantastic. I want to thank you, first of all, for, the extraordinary effort that each of you are making to be a part of this. With the second year, I think a lot of folks are, more in tune with how this program can work for the benefit of the community and the kinds of things that you want to see. And so we're really looking forward to a second year process that is more focused and actually where a lot more participants get involved because the projects are compelling. I know that as paid staff in the city, we spend all of our days, at least during the work week, and some of us at times not during the work week, devoted to government. But our government does not work without the participation of the community. And one of the most valuable things that I think that participatory budgeting has taught us is that this is a really great way to get people engaged in a part of government that typically the people do not get involved in. In my experience in about 20 years of managing cities, it's been pretty rare to see many people show up for budget discussions, other than the diehard people who, the kind of the groupies of budgets. But generally speaking, maybe there would be a third of the people in this room on the night that we pass these budgets, which can be, hundreds of millions of dollars. So what PB has done is given you and the community a stake in something that really is very important to you, and it's given you a reason to care about the budget. And so from my perspective, that's a really good thing. So tonight we're going to have department heads here and division managers get up and speak about some of the things that are going on in their department. And I recognize that some of the things they're going to talk about don't necessarily relate to some of the PB projects you might be thinking about. That's okay. One of the things that I recognized is in the PB rulebook is the idea of opening up government and creating more dialogue between your government and the community. And so that's one of the efforts here tonight. We're okay with that. We're here ready to talk with you and to listen to your ideas and to give you our thoughts on those ideas if you want them. So I encourage you to take this opportunity and engage with us. I will just end by telling you that earlier this year, I think it was February, we did goal setting with the City Council. We do that every year. This year, the council was very focused. It was really a great session. We did it over 2 days. And What they ended up adopting as the so-called Tier 1 and priorities were the following things: public safety, economic development, particularly focused on downtown, instituting or at least exploring the creation of a high-speed broadband network across the whole city. And the last thing is something called Code for America. Some of you probably know about that. It's a program where we would have to apply. We have applied for essentially tech geek interns that would come and work for the city and develop custom applications using technology, of course, to do something that benefits the city. It's that kind of amorphous, but it's something that's really, really exciting. So those are the kind of the four top tier priorities. There's a whole lot of other things, of course, you can imagine that the City Council considered. And if you're interested in that, on the agenda for next Tuesday night, the report from that goal setting will be in front of the council. It'll be online. You can read it, and it probably will dovetail with many of the ideas that you're going to come up with. With that introduction, I think we'll turn it back to Donna Mooney, our Assistant City Attorney, who's going to speak. I will say there's only one person who's not here from the executive team. That's our HR Director. She's on vacation this week, so any HR questions, I'll handle those. All right, Donna, it's your turn.
Thank you. I'm Donna Mooney. I'm the Chief Assistant City Attorney with the City Attorney's Department. The City Attorney for the city, if you don't know already, it's Claudia Quintana, so I work with her, for her. And in our department, we have 7 attorneys. It's much like if you're thinking about a small business or a corporation, it's sort of like in-house counsel. Those are the types of things that we handle for the city, which is a municipal corporation. Among the various things that we do, what I do is we give advice to the various elected and appointed officials and the commissions throughout the city on things like open meetings laws, like the Brown Act, when to post an agenda, how to style agenda titles, that sort of thing. We give advice on the Public Records Act, on public records that have to be provided for inspection or copying when somebody comes to ask about those. We also defend the city in litigation. We currently have, I want to say, about 40 lawsuits against the city. Among our 7 attorneys, there are a couple of them that are devoted full-time to those lawsuits. And I've been here just about 6-7 months now. This program, Participatory Budgeting, interests me a great deal because it's cutting edge. It's hard to find another city in California to turn to say, well, how do you handle this? Because it is such a new and innovative program, so it's very exciting for me to work on. I've been in municipal law myself for 10 to 15 years now. In our office, the City Attorney's Office, our current projects, our priorities, we have about 9 or 10 of them, and I wanted to highlight we provide support for the participatory budgeting program by sitting down with staff and discussing various issues that come up with making a project happen. Part of my time I spend looking at draft grant agreements for the projects that have come through as finalists and have been selected. We look for provisions in there that are the standard types of things you would find in a contract. Throughout the city, much of what we do in the city attorney's office is review contracts for purchases of materials or supplies or services. And these grants are very similar in that way because it's either an acquisition of some materials or some items or some equipment, or it's a contract to provide money for say the labor that's going to go along with it, like some of the parks and recreation improvements that are happening. We also, outside of participatory budgeting, we have various legal issues that come up. We have 2 attorneys dedicated to the neighborhood law program, which is devoted to helping to get rid of blight and other things that are defined as nuisances throughout the city. And those are based on complaints that come in from people who live in various neighborhoods, and maybe there's an issue with a house that has been a bank foreclosed on it. Then there's perhaps vandalism or people who are coming and squatting on the property. We also, there are some other topics that are current, and we work to research the legal issues and give advice to the staff and the city council on how to go forward with those. I've been asked to talk about two things in particular. One is the idea of public benefits. Your program, Participatory Budgeting, has a guiding principle that whatever projects come forward should be a public benefit. You'll see later in a PowerPoint presentation, I think. Sorry. The way we have discussed public benefit is that it's really, you think about it in a continuum, and you can probably guess, a lot of this I think is common sense. You want to stay away from something that is a perk to an individual or a private person. And what we are looking for is a notion or an idea that's going to benefit a number of people. On one end of the spectrum, to give you an example, there's a project that comes forward and it's perhaps a private jet for one person. Pretty easy to spot that that's not a public benefit. The other end of the spectrum, the more people that are going to receive something, the more people who are part of the whole program, the taxpayers, the better off the program is going to be when you're looking at it from trying to determine if it's public benefit. If it was, we're going to mow all lawns throughout Vallejo, that's going to pass the public benefits test a lot easier than the private jet that's going to one individual. There are some great, I've looked at the list that has come up for this year. There's some great ideas, all kinds of projects to help all sorts of categories of people, programs. So those are looking pretty good. And when the finals come in, or when the wave comes in, I'm told not to take vacation in July because we'll be going through those and looking and seeing if there's any issues that we have to button down. The other item I was asked to talk about is the idea of conflict of interest or interest in a contract. And I wanted to say just briefly, there are two state laws that we keep an eye on that apply to local government funding. One is the Political Reform Act, and the second one is, shorthand, we call it Section 1090 or 1090 issue. That comes from Government Code 1090. There's some overlap between those two laws, but essentially what the law is saying is this: there can't be any self-dealing. It's a very similar notion to the public benefit, which is that public money, taxpayer money, shouldn't be going to a private individual. Section 1090 says that someone should not have an interest in a contract. Because this grant program through participatory budgeting is a grant contract, what we want to look out for is to make sure that the money isn't being channeled somehow to somebody who's involved in actually making or negotiating a decision on where that money's going. Sometimes it's not even intentional. Sometimes it's actually the best of intentions. So we just want to keep an eye out that that the money is, the grant agreement's not going to be a violation of that statute. And I think I've said enough about the city attorney's office. But we are here, our office is here to help the program succeed. And I work with staff, and we try to address all these issues to make sure that these programs are implemented successfully and minimize the risk.
Thank you. So if you have any questions, now would be the time to file over to the podium. I'll give you a minute. I don't see anyone getting up. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and we can move on to our next three presenters. So first up, we have our Finance Director, Deborah Lochner, our Housing and Community Development Manager, Ann Putney, and our Community and Economic Development Director, Mark Sawicki.
Hi, I'm Deborah Lochner. I'm the finance director, and the finance department is responsible for commercial services that does water billing and meter reading. We also do business licensing, and accounting. And for accounting is one of our biggest, half of our biggest programs. But we do all the budgeting, monitoring of the budget, reporting, auditing, and just all the financial transactions of the city run through our office. And that's, in a nutshell, what we do. And since she only gave me 5 minutes, I'm going to stop. So
Ann Putney?
Hello, everybody. I'm Ann Putney, Housing and Community Development Manager. The Housing and Community Development Division, or HCD as we call it, is home to a variety of programs that you may or may not be aware of. The biggest one is the Section 8 program, Housing Choice Voucher Program, formerly known as Section 8. And that is a long-term rental subsidy program that provides rental assistance to lower-income families in Vallejo. Currently, we have 2,062 families on our program living here in town. Of those, 55% have a disabled family member in the home, and an additional 22% are elderly, 62 or older. Some of those do overlap. Some are elderly and disabled, but overall about 60% of our participants are either elderly or disabled. And this program, which is federally funded, as is most of our programs, encourages deconcentration by giving the family a voucher to choose housing where they want to, rather than trying to concentrate them in areas of poverty or minority concentration, as well as encouraging self-sufficiency. So it's a really good program. It's also the city's largest tool against homelessness, trying to prevent as well as reduce homelessness. Other programs that we have may not be as well known, but do have a big impact in the community. Those are the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG program, the Home Partnership Initiative program, and also the Neighborhood Stabilization program. In general, these programs assist homeowners by providing first-time homebuyer loans and rehabilitation loans to improve owner-occupied properties. But they also assist neighborhoods by acquiring and rehabbing foreclosed properties so that it helps remove blight in the neighborhoods. In addition to that, there are other non-housing related things that are funded by these programs, such as curb ramps, improved lighting, different things of that nature in different areas. One of the requirements is that the area to be assisted has to have 51% or more of its residents who are low to moderate income, so that's one of the requirements. In addition, the CDBG program, Community Development Block Grant, also provides funding directly to social services that provide direct resources to our lower income residents and our homeless here in town, and it also funds the Crime-Free Multi-Housing Program. Okay. Some of the projects that HCD is currently working on, in addition to the day-to-day administration of the programs I mentioned, include preparation and submission of action plans for the coming year, fiscal year 14-15, an application for a Section 108 loan guarantee for Mare Island in order to assist in demolishing some hazardous buildings and preparing the land for future development. Enhancement and coordination of services available to the homeless, development of multifamily homeownership units available to low and moderate income households, and conducting a customer satisfaction survey. Some of the major gaps in the provision of services that we experience include staffing and funds for services. Again, we're federally funded for all our programs, so we don't receive generally any general fund monies. Due to budget cuts at the federal level, we recently had to eliminate a position and leave several others vacant, so that impacts our ability to provide comprehensive services in a timely manner. And in addition, There is no funding for homeless services directly. The programs that we have do not provide funding specifically for that population. So there's some gaps in that area as well. We are working on trying to coordinate services in a more comprehensive manner and coordinating with the county to try and see what resources we can bring. Finally, the projects that HCD takes on are typically limited to those that serve low and moderate income households, as I mentioned. Within those parameters and funding guidelines, the city generally releases requests for proposals or for requests for qualifications to help us determine what programs and projects we will be able to fund with these programs. We're on a 2-year cycle right now, so what was approved in 13-14 will run through 14-15 as well, but we will be asking the City Council to kind of reaffirm those allocations coming up. So that's pretty much HCD in a nutshell, and we'll be available to answer questions in a few minutes.
I'm going to do a little plug for Ann, too. The 14-15 recommendation is going to be up on Open City Hall starting tomorrow, if you'd like to comment on that, or at one of the meetings as well. So next we have Mark Sawicki, our Community and Economic Development Director.
Good evening. Again, Mark Sawicki, Community and Economic Development Department. My department is, our goal is to create an environment for fostering economic growth, jobs, revenue for the city, as well as to make sure we get quality development in Vallejo. We're broken down into 3 divisions. There's the Planning Division, the Building Division, and the Economic Development Division. The Planning Division is responsible for current and long-range planning. That includes looking at applications as they come into the counter for people who want to do things to make sure that they're compatible with what our zoning ordinance allows. We review and process those permits. The Planning Division is also involved in long-range planning, and right now we're going into a general plan update. The general plan is the constitution for the city, if you will. It describes where things are permissible for building, where we want residential, where we want commercial, how they interface with each other, specific plans for specific areas like downtown, like Mare Island. All of these things are in the general plan. This is a multi-year process that we have just embarked on. Right now we're at the 30,000-foot level, looking at what's the community's vision and how that is going to translate into the various elements which are in the general plan, the biggest of which is the land use element and how we organize ourselves. The Building Division is responsible for reviewing building plans and issuing permits, making sure that quality buildings are built the way they should be according to code. They also go out and inspect buildings. And then the Economic Development Division is the group that is responsible for trying to enhance our economic growth. Again, that means jobs and revenue are the things that we're looking for. That includes business retention and expansion, business recruitment, implementing the Economic Development Strategic Plan, which we adopted over a year ago. Our biggest struggle right now is staffing. I've been on the job for 6 months. We just hired an economic development manager for the ED division. That position hasn't been filled for a couple of years. Our building division, we are out recruiting and shall soon be adding a new permanent chief building official. So, and then that permeates down through the divisions to add more staff. We also, like all the departments and divisions in the city, would love to have more budget to do the things that we want to do and need to do. So we have to be wise about which of the things that we can take on. Some of the projects that we are working on, one of the things that I focus mostly on are North Mare Island. We had a study session about a month ago with the council about some of the proposals that are coming in on that. It's a big task to go through them and figure out who it is we want to hopefully pin our hopes with to make something happen out there. The waterfront, we've had a plan for over a decade, trying to get that up and going again. Now that we don't have redevelopment funding to help us make it happen, we have to get even more creative. I mentioned the general plan update, the economic development strategic plan. Now that we have the ED manager in place, we can start implementing on some of those things. And again, funding is something we need for those. items. The city manager mentioned the council goal setting, and a couple of the items that came up in that as top topics include the fiber optic in the downtown. If that's something that can get underway, that's something that we can use to attract businesses to the downtown, to Vallejo, wherever else that fiber optic line goes to, because it's the future is using technology, high-speed technology, and it's something we need in Vallejo. The Code for America project was something that came up. That's also something that we can use in many departments. Our executive team meeting was talking a lot this morning about technology, and inside City Hall, it holds us back in a lot of ways. The Code for America project is something that can help us tackle at least something in that regard. That can help us move forward. We also talked about opportunity sites. One in particular is the Cook property, which is 50 acres over on Highway 80 next to Northgate. We have a developer that wants to build there, and this is something that the council has highlighted, that we want to be proactive and figure out what it is that the city wants there before the developer tells us what they're interested in doing, and try to work together on that as we move forward. That's something you should probably see coming forward, and this all takes resources of our staff as well as consultant time to help us to analyze these issues going forward. The ED strategic plan, things like marketing and branding are things that we haven't been able to touch, and it's something that we want to do going forward. Business retention, getting out there, talking to businesses, what are their needs, are they growing, can they grow in place, how can we help them? The concept of economic gardening, trying to grow what we have. It's the easiest way. It's a lot harder than going outside the community and trying to find a business to come into the community. You got to look at what we have and grow what's here. It's a much bigger bang for the buck. When I look at projects, and what I would like you to look at projects in the economic development sphere is think about the biggest bang for the buck. Think about that return on investment. What are the catalytic things that we can be doing at the least cost and the least risk, and things that we can get off the ground are the things that I would be looking for. As I looked at some of the projects on the list, things like branding are something that we can put funds toward, which right now we don't have programmed for. The fiber optic, the Code for America. These are things that we've already identified internally, council has identified as being priorities, and you know, again, staying focused on priorities is a good thing. Putting the money behind those priorities is a good thing, rather than spreading it widely on multiple smaller projects. You know, we only have so much bandwidth, so our ability to focus on the most important things are what we should be doing, in my opinion. The other thing is improving our processes, and that again goes back to the technology. In my department, it's really important when someone walks in the door that we can give them certainty. How much time it's going to take, at what cost, and are they able to do what they think they can do? We can't deliver that very well, because right now we have a general plan and a zoning code that is not very clear and is not up to date. That holds us back. A lot of our technology internally holds us back, and these are things that we want to be able to provide the best customer service. So those are the things that I would suggest you look at. Thank you.
Thank you. So if there are any questions this time around, we must be doing a really great job. If you can please step to the podium. Since we're recording, we want to make sure we capture the audio.
Hi, my name is Jean Lykover. This question is for Deborah. Why is our water billing department done by an out-of-town firm? When I pay my water bill, I send it. If we're interested, I've never had an opportunity to ask this question. If we're interested in giving jobs to people in Vallejo, why are we farming out our water bills to some outfit in Los Angeles? That's where I mail my check to.
Because there are no lockbox services in the city of Vallejo.
Well, could the Vallejo Flood Control and Sanitation District, I believe, but I may be wrong,
We have analyzed this, and we don't have the staff to send out those bills on a weekly basis. We send out 39,000 bills over an 8-week period. We don't have the staff capacity to do that ourselves. We require that it goes to a lockbox.
I do not understand what a lockbox is.
Well, it's a service that takes the pay stub and the money out of the envelope, puts it in the bank for us, gives us a report that automatically posts those payments into our system, so we don't have to hand key everything that comes in. It's a service that we pay for, and that provides some efficiency for the staff. There is not a service like that offered in the city of Vallejo.
Okay. I'm not happy with that answer, but thank you. Okay, and then
we're actually going to go to the next. Thank you.
Good evening, Marty Brown. I was just wondering, one thing that comes up as an ongoing issue with the projects is, at first blush, oftentimes they look like a one-time expense, and then when you dig a little bit deeper, there's some hidden sort of ongoing expenses. And I think that's always an issue with, I saw last year with the delegates and also with staff trying to figure out, you know, is this ongoing expense, is it something that can be absorbed in an existing department, or can another public agency absorb that cost? And so, I'm just wondering kind of a little bit maybe how that's going to be negotiated this year versus last year. I think things like, for example, the Sonoma Boulevard Urban Corridor, people wanted to make improvements based on the plan that was approved by the council, and you know, it's concluded that's an ongoing maintenance. We don't have that in the budget. We can't do it. On the other hand, we approved 16 park projects and improvements, which somebody's going to pay for the ongoing maintenance after the initial installation of those park improvements, which I'm assuming it's going to be GVRD. For some of those board members that are out there. So I'm just, you know, I was kind of trying to figure out if you have some suggestions before we, you know, hand projects over to you in terms of how we should be thinking about those possible hidden ongoing expenses. Thank you.
Great. So one of our admin analysts, who I'm sure you are all familiar with, is Leah Gage, and she's working diligently on project implementation from the first cycle projects. And this is one of the things that she's identified, and I'm going to actually let her speak to that question.
Well, that's a great question. And what I want to encourage everyone to do throughout this process is, as questions come up, please bring them forward to the PB staff. I think one thing that wasn't as available last year, first of all, we were dealing with a shorter time frame, but there weren't people here at City Hall that could field those questions on a daily basis. And meetings will be taking place again with city staff in June, where you can ask some fairly specific questions. But if there's something along the way that you need an answer to, please get in touch. I think on the issue of ongoing operating costs for projects, I'll say something quickly. If a project is being implemented by a public agency, whether that is GVRD or the school district, a non-city public agency, an in-kind contribution is required from them. So in the case of GVRD, we're essentially funding a tremendous amount of materials for them, and they are making improvements to 12 parks in town with their current staff. So they've offered those staffing costs as their in-kind contribution. Now, you may be right, we're going to put in 2 new playgrounds, and there'll be some ongoing maintenance associated with those playgrounds. My understanding is that they're actually replacing playgrounds that were there before, and so we're being maintained under a contract with the city. So in that case, there's actually not sort of an additional maintenance burden. There may be in other cases, and there may be an agreement on the part of a department to take on those ongoing costs. One example is the camera project, which Greg Taylor may be able to address, as well as Chief Crines later. And that project passed last year, was approved by voters and came before the council, and is funding the installation of cameras around town. The police department was approached with the project, and at that time decided that they were willing to take on the ongoing costs of reviewing that footage. However, those cameras at some point they'll have a shelf life. And when those cameras aren't operable anymore, PB money won't be available to replace them, and there's no guarantee that police department money will be available either. But that's sort of a case where there's a middle ground. The police are willing to manage and review the images as long as the cameras are operable, and then after that, well, we'll see where we're at that time. So I hope that answers the question generally. Often, if you have a question, we'll have to bring it forward to whether it's a city department or a non-city agency and put that question forward to them.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Lola Lidiju. I'm a resident of Glen Cove. I've lived in Vallejo for about 5 years. My two questions are, one is for the economic development. I wanted to know if the city has incentives, proposal to attract businesses into the area, and I'm talking about high-paying businesses. One of the reasons why I said that was a few years ago, City of Sacramento used abandoned Army Depot buildings in Sacramento, and they used that as an incentive to attract one of the computer companies. And they moved their operations from Southern California to Sacramento, and they were able to hire about 4,000 or 5,000 people in the area. I was wondering if the city's, working on similar incentives for companies to attract companies to this area. And I think because once we start attracting high-paying jobs in this area, it would actually grow the city revenue tremendously. That's one question. The other question is,
Are they related? If not, I'd ask that you get back in line to ask.
Yeah, they're related.
Okay.
So the other question is also with the economic development. You mentioned that you're short of staff, and I was wondering if some of the citizens that are interested in helping the city with this can volunteer their time to help you guys until you're fully staffed, just in this area to actually help the city attract businesses or bring some ideas that would help provide incentives to the existing businesses in the area.
So with regards to business incentives, that can be a tricky and slippery slope to if the incentive is dollars. Cities should avoid doing that because then it just becomes an arms race. Who wants to give away the most money? What you really want to do is create an environment that welcomes businesses. That's everything from what the permit counter is like, how quickly they can get through, what the certainty is that they can get through. A lot of times it's not so much about dollars, it's about knowing for sure that when they come with a project, that it's a project that's going to be welcomed and it's going to get done quickly. When you look at North Mare Island, one of the biggest things we can do is actually get that land prepared for development. There's obstacles in the way, remediation, demolition of the buildings that prevent anybody from just showing up and taking it. So those are the kind of places where we would prefer to be putting our dollars than to just say we're going to give somebody money that walks in the door. And sometimes they walk in the door and they'll walk out the door after that money runs out, and then they don't stay. There's some ways that you can incentivize it to make sure you get a longer-term return on that money. There are ways to do it. And some of the ways you do that is part of a development agreement where you're getting something from them for the dollars that you're putting in. And we can do that in selected places, but you don't want to be broadcasting that we're giving away dollars. With regards to the volunteers, volunteers are great, but they also need to be managed, and that requires staff time. I think the best thing that citizens can do is shop in Vallejo, tell other people about Vallejo, tell other people to come to Vallejo, talk to businesses that you like that are not in Vallejo, and ask them to consider coming to Vallejo, and send them to the Economic Development Division. That's probably the greatest thing that you could do. We have an Economic Vitality Commission that has not met in a while, simply because we're looking for things for them to do, and they're also very interested in volunteering. And that's something that we've talked about internally, how best to use the resources of folks that want to help us.
When I mentioned incentives, one of the things I talked about, I guess I need to expound on this, is that the city of Sacramento did not actually give any dollars out. They leased that abandoned building to this company for $1 a year for 30 years, okay? And the company came into the abandoned Army Depot and they renovated with their own money all the buildings. They reconstructed buildings, they brought all their tools in, and they hired people. The city has, nothing came out of the city's pocket for that. So those are the kind of incentives that I was talking about. And also, you mentioning that you're preparing the land over at Mare Island, similar thing was done in Costa Mesa about 20 years ago. And I have friends that work for Western Digital in that area when that was being done. So it wasn't money coming out of these cities. The city actually provided and leased that landed property to them for $1 for 30 years. And they were able to bring in capable employees, skilled employees into the area. And not only that, they employ people in the area also too. We were talking about between 4,000 and 5,000 employees. Mm-hmm. That's a very big number of people that were hired for that project.
And that's very likely the kind of a development deal that would happen on North Mare Island, where the land is essentially free because it will take a lot of investment for them to get something up and running. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Deanie Stahl-Nash, born and raised here, and a delegate. And this question's for Ann, because when we go as delegates, we want to do the best job that we can. So will we have access to already properties so that we can bring our proposals back with monies that, like if this property is already existing, then we wouldn't have to be building, or how much work certain buildings would be done? So is there going to be, like, maybe we can get together and what properties are available that is owned by the city, and like maybe similar to that where we would fix it up and get the volunteers and people that were going to be there to work on it?
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not sure what your question is.
Well, is there going to be, our passion is Dignity Village. Me, it's day center and night center, so they're not wandering all over our city. That would be ideal at Dignity Village, and we all know that. So my question is there already property that we really could look at now while we're doing our search? We're doing research. We're going to be doing research, a lot of us, and we would like to know what's available in the city that would be reasonable, maybe.
I'm not familiar with the properties that are available. That might be something that economic development might be more able to speak to. That's something
We do have a list of properties that are available. It was actually something that used to be on our website, but we need to figure out how to get it back on there.
Is there a possibility we can come down and maybe get, I'm just trying to save us some steps, and I'll let that go, and then we'll talk more later.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Chops. I'm one of the budget delegates. And I'm not sure who to really direct this question towards, maybe Ms. Lachner. From the standpoint of financial strategic planning, is the city reviewing all the leveraging opportunities where city investment in services, and in particular services to the homeless or low income, could actually yield substantial investment from the federal and state governments? And I speak more specifically of HUD, McKinney-Vento. So this is legislation that's been in place for decades about moving federal money into the very projects we're talking about to serve homeless people, all the way from supportive housing to shelters to outreach services to food to day centers. And what they're looking for is to see local investment so that they can take that investment and expand it, bring it to scale through federal dollars. So from a strategic planning standpoint and a financial strategic planning standpoint, is the city looking at those leveraging opportunities rather than looking for the city to carry the full burden of these kinds of services?
That's a great question.
Kevin, is that specifically with regard to homelessness services or more broadly than
I'm speaking specifically with regard to homeless services, but, you know, the base realignment and closure program. You're talking about Mayor Island. So Mayor Island's been, you know, closed for decades. This piece of legislation has been in place for decades, and the government, even the federal government, even offers assistance, technical assistance and financial assistance for the conversion and the rehabilitation both of the land and of buildings. So again, it's how are we as a city utilizing resources that are readily available to us to advance our own goals?
That's a very good question. Typically, McKinney-Vento falls under continuum of care, I believe, and that is something that is run by, it's county-wide. It's not something that's specific to the city of Vallejo, even though every city within the county is eligible to receive funding. We are looking at trying to be more represented within the continuum of care structure, and that's something that we're going to try to be able to bring as a resource more to Vallejo in the future. But as of right now, that we haven't been receiving, there have been individual providers in Vallejo that have received funding through the continuum of care. The city itself has not been one of those agencies, but it is something that we're looking at trying to.
Yeah, I mean, it holds certainly great potential for the city of Vallejo. The city of Vallejo in the county system has the largest number of homeless people, but gets the lowest amount of dollars allocated from the county to homeless services. And again, you know, I'm not suggesting that Vallejo will step out on its own, but Vallejo could access those services through a structure that doesn't disrupt its relationship with the county, but isn't absolutely dependent on the county. So anyway, just an opportunity.
Good evening, Ann Carr, and I'm thrilled to see everyone here. I think this question is for Mark, of the economic development. I noticed on City Council the last meeting, there was a small bit about summer job training for youth through the Youth Energy Services or something. It's a green energy thing, and the city is giving a very cheap rent for the summer, and I think that's a great idea. I just wanted to see if there are any other similar ideas for job training for youth coming up that maybe some of the PB projects could dovetail with. And I want to point out, I don't know if the city has ever looked at the city of Oakland, which has a pretty extensive construction job training program. I'm not sure if it's exclusive for youth or not, but they have multiple flavors of construction training and job reentry kind of training and support. So if the city has anything else in mind on that, I think this group would be interested in hearing it. And I want to put a shout out for an idea that I don't know if the city's ever looked at it, but with all the buildings we have on North Mare Island, it seems to me that we could have our own job training program in asbestos remediation and lead remediation. And it may sound kind of crazy, I'm not actually joking. We could have people who learn how to do that work, and we've got our own laboratory right here. So anyway, I'd like to know if there are any other job training things that are in the winds or that could be in the winds. Thank you.
Thank you. So currently, the city does not have any youth job training programs. We did publicize the energy program through PG&E. So at this time, that wouldn't be viable. But next week, during the agency briefings, I suspect that some of them may have similar programs to what you're looking for. Okay, so we're going to I think that's all the questions, so we're going to move on. Great questions. We do want to try to stay a little bit on time. So next, we have our interim chief information officer, Gregory Taylor. Then our code enforcement manager, Namat Shakur Grantham, and our public works director, David Kleinschmidt.
Good evening. Being the IT Guy, you knew there would be some PowerPoint. So there aren't too many, so hopefully a picture will be worth 1,000 words, because I don't plan on talking for very long. Again, my name is Greg Taylor. I'm the Interim Chief Information Officer for the City of Vallejo. Information technology basically supports all the departments of the city, which in turn support the citizens of Vallejo. So what we're hoping is that everything you see here, you can almost see a correlation to something in your lives that it might help. Okay, so I'll be talking about some of the major projects. So these are the overarching projects beyond the day-to-day operations that we do, such as manage all of the information technology, emails, things like that. We'll be talking about the public safety computer-aided dispatch system, very briefly, the PB citywide camera project, a little longer, because that's obviously all of your doing. We'll go through the police car cameras and ALPRs, that's automated license plate readers. We'll talk about the ShoreTel VoIP, which is voice over IP phone system that we're implementing. The upgraded phone automated payment system. We're implementing a Microsoft domain and Outlook that will replace our group-wise email system. We're also upgrading our entire finance system. We're implementing a cloud server disaster recovery system, and we're upgrading all of the core infrastructure within the entire city. So we are very busy, but we're making things happen thanks to a lot of the Measure B funding. Okay, computer-aided dispatch record system. This has actually been in the works for the last couple years. Our Chief of Police, Joseph Kreins, has been spearheading this, one of the major projects since he got here. We actually went live middle of February, and we are light years, and I've been here for 7 years, light years ahead of where we were as far as what we can do in dispatch, what we can do in the cars, the mapping system. We can see where calls are, we can see where our units are, we can see a lot more than we ever could before, and it is making a difference. We've been live for about 2 months now on this one. City camera system. Now this is going to dovetail into the PB camera system because honestly going forward, that is how we're implementing new cameras in the city. It's strictly out of the participatory budget project that was voted on and approved. Now when I say city cameras, I mean cameras within the city. Now if a department wants a camera watching its front door, that's still us. But cameras within the city are coming out of the PB project. What you see here is dispatch. Now in dispatch, you can't see all of them. There's actually 7 of these monitors, I think they're about 46 inches each, around the system, around the room. Each monitor can be configured to show whatever dispatch wishes to see at the time. I took this yesterday, basically a quick screenshot of one of those monitors. We actually have over 100 cameras in the city, and that's implemented by City of Vallejo. We also have another at least couple hundred coming in from the school district, the district offices, the elementary schools, the high schools. So there is an enormous amount of data coming into our public safety dispatch center, and they're also answering 911 calls. They're also, fielding all of the calls for service. So they are busy. So that is our current city cameras, well, some of them. And here is the PB camera project. This is just the first phase. So what you see here, we put in within the last month. We actually have a few more, but the screenshot there, that's the way screens are arranged. So that is the ferry terminal. We're obviously going to expand out from there, but that's PB in action. We've also done other projects. We are completely revamping basically almost all of the IT in the city, but especially for public safety. So what you see on the left is a police cruiser. On the right, what you see is all of the equipment we put into that police cruiser. So those are new computers, those are cameras. Every car virtually has at least 2 cameras running front and back. We're still working out to actually finish the implementation, but we just started that right after the CAD project, or the computer-aided dispatch. So that was at the end of February, and we're implementing as we speak. And obviously the cars that can do license plate readers have even more cameras. So we've got at least 2 and up to, I think, 6 or 8 on a particular car. That's another vehicle, an SUV. Again, the equipment inside is very similar, just the layout of the cameras is different. ShoreTel VoIP. A lot of people don't understand how phones work because they're used to the old way, which is basically AT&T. You pay AT&T, they handle your phone system. The problem with that is with today's technology, we can actually be our own phone company for the most part. And we save well over 50% of our bill. Some of the departments were showing 75% savings because what it does is all of the switching, all of the phone work that's done within the city is done by us. So we are our own phone company. I call AT&T if I want to make a long distance call. Well, I don't call them, but they interact with our phone switch if we want to make a long distance call. But everything we call inside, which is the majority of our phone calls, are handled by the IT department. So the IT department is its own phone department. It does the cameras. It does a lot. And again, we have savings at least 50% over our current bills. And again, we're implementing it throughout the city. Right now, we've got pretty much all of City Hall done, and we're going to go through the public safety, fire, police department, et cetera. Automated phone payment system. The finance director talked about very briefly on, is things like water billing. So if you want to pay your water bill, you can pay it online. You can obviously pay it through the mail. You can come in, but you can also, once we finish, use the better system of phone automated. So what that is, we have 4 lines. We're upgrading it to 8. It'll be multilingual. We're looking to have that done by the summer. We're implementing a new Microsoft domain and Outlook email that'll get us within industry standard. We're going off of GroupWise and Novell, and that's a very large project because we've been on it for a very long time, but we're making that happen as well. All these projects were happening throughout this year. Lastly, we're upgrading our entire finance system. We're changing all of the core network infrastructure, from our core switch to our core, everything that's public safety core, we're changing out. We're also implementing more disaster recovery systems. That's the system on the left. So basically the idea here is that instead of doing tapes, which we've been doing, well, forever, we get a tape backup, Iron Mount, which is our vendor. They come by with a little red box. We put the tapes in the red box. They take it away from us. And if something goes horribly wrong, we hope to put in a tape in another system and get the thing running. We used to do that. We used to do that as of a month ago. What we do now is every night we upload, let's say, all of our finance data in a separate city or separate, I think this one's in San Francisco, but they have a whole finance system just like ours, and it's dedicated to us, and they have all of our data as of last night. So if I were to lose our server room or something, were to go down, they can immediately bring up our finance system with our data as of last night, and we'd be up and running. We've done a 72-hour test. It does work, and we'd be able to keep running on that system. And again, that's some of the projects that IT is running.
Thank you, Greg. So next up, we have Namat Shakur-Grantham, our Code Enforcement Manager.
So good evening, everybody. My name is Namat Shakur-Grantham. I'm the Code Enforcement Manager for the City of Vallejo. And the first thing I want to say is thank you for participating in this, this effort. Participatory budgeting is near and dear to my heart from the first time I ever heard of it. It is so innovative, and it's so thinking outside the box is so beneficial to cities. And if it's not caught on all over the United States, it will. And I'm so happy that Vallejo is like the testing ground or so, and I'm just fascinated to be a part of this. So first of all, I don't know how many people don't know what code enforcement is, but in short, code enforcement is where we enforce the city's municipal codes against blight and anything that basically will create a health and safety issue for the exterior of the property. So trash, junk, debris, broken windows, anything that would make a structure look bad, vacant buildings, and cars on the lawn, things of that nature. We handle the violations on private property, but of course we get pretty much every call, whether people see it on the street, the highway, county property. So that's why we are so proud to work with other agencies. We can't do what we do without other agencies and other departments, because it's all intermingled. I mean, if somebody sees a blighted property, they don't care if it's on public or private property. They just want it cleaned up because it affects how people react to being in Vallejo, working in Vallejo, having a business in Vallejo, going to school, and so forth. So what we do is we address complaints on violations on a complaint basis, and we also address violations proactively every day, to the tune of about approximately like 400 cases a month. And we also we have a property registration program where we've since May, I believe May of last year, we have registered about over 700 properties, where we have the absentee landlord or the bank, if it's a foreclosed property, register the property with us and then monitor it monthly. So we As I said before, we work in collaboration with the police department, city attorney's office, because we often have cases where, after a few citations, if they don't comply, then we have to go to other measures. And we've had cases that have been on the books for a long time because they were just so hard to enforce. And so now, thank goodness, we have, in working with the attorney's office, we've had two properties demolished, and that was with Measure B funding, so we are grateful for Measure B. And we've also, there's also probably about, a handful of properties in receivership. So, that's a court-ordered function. And so at this point, we have properties that they don't fit into receivership or demolition. We're gearing up now to try to take them to court. So in addition to that, we're working with Caltrans. We have a Vallejo interagency partnership where we work with Caltrans to address more proactive cleaning up of the freeways, and the Public Works Department is major in this, because not only is Public Works cleaning up the city-owned properties, which there's quite a bit, but they're also assisting with the cleanup of the freeways so that it gets done on a more frequent basis. We're working with Vallejo Santa Flood District, GVRD, the county, and other agencies to clean up all the thoroughfares. We're focusing on the major thoroughfares and the entrances to and from the city. These are the first things people see when they, come through Vallejo. We had a huge encampments. Oh, that's the other thing, homeless encampments. We clean up homeless encampments on private properties in a very humane, holistic way. We have a administrative rule that dictates how we do that, and we work with other agencies. Definitely, it's always a group effort to clean up homeless encampments and make sure that everybody's on a win-win with that. So in addition to that, we address the railroads and basically, so that's the major thoroughfares. We have approximately a 90% compliance rate when we send out a warning notice. But then again, there's still people who are elderly or financially disadvantaged who we are going to have a forum. We're going to have a big community forum on April 29th to work with the faith-based community and other social service providers so that we can find a way to work with and alleviate the pain or the sting of code enforcement penalties for people who just can't afford that and need assistance. So what we're working on, just two other things. We're looking forward to incorporating more zoning code enforcement and building code enforcement in our division with the code enforcement division. We think a one-stop shop is good, and hopefully eventually we'll have a real inspection program. And we're also looking at what the city of Oakland is doing to have one huge area, one huge space, like say the fairgrounds or something, where we just put a huge number of dumpsters and allow people to come, just for Vallejo citizens, just for a certain amount of time, to just come and do free dumping so that we don't have all the dumping. We can mitigate all this dumping we have in the alleys and along the freeways. So that is my presentation. I don't know. Anybody has any questions?
Thank you, Namat. So actually, we're going to hear from our Public Works Director next, David Kleinschmidt.
There we go. Need to ask the technology guy how to do that. My name is David Kleinschmidt. I'm the Public Works Director, and the Public Works Department is divided into three divisions. We have the Water Division, Maintenance, and Engineering. And up on the screen, I've identified some of our major areas of responsibility. We are responsible for the treatment and the conveyance of the drinking water that everyone in Vallejo uses. We're responsible for street maintenance, the street lights, traffic signals, and signs within the city of Vallejo. We're responsible for all the large capital improvement projects, roadway projects, pipelines, any of the city-owned and city-funded projects, infrastructure projects throughout town. We build fire stations, we remodel City Hall, we do work at the, with all the city buildings that we have. We're also responsible for reviewing the plans that come in from private development, whether they be subdivisions or commercial developments, looking at the applicability and the compliance for our codes and regulations regarding the engineering and the access and designs of these improvements. We also are responsible for 27 different landscape maintenance districts through town. Our larger ones are Hidden Brook, Glen Cove, Mare Island. We manage landscape contracts through these districts and provide the maintenance services in those particular areas. And lastly, the marina. Public Works Department is responsible for the operation of the marina, the tenants, the berthers, the dredging, and everything associated with the marina. We have a large staff of close to 180 employees, but even with that large staff, we feel that to accomplish the things that we need to do to keep the city running the way it is, that we could do a better job if we had additional staff. But we're working within the constraints of our budgets and getting the work done that were budgeted through the general fund and the other funds that we have available to us. One of the things that we have been able to accomplish with some of the Measure B and the PB funding is investing more funds into our infrastructure, roadway repairs, dealing with potholes and the conditions of our streets. I know that has been a very big topic, and we hear a lot from the community about the condition of our roadways. It's not a surprise to us that it's a concern to the community, and we look for opportunities to stretch those dollars as far as we can to provide as much new asphalt or as much new roadway surfaces that we can. When we do get funding from outside agencies, we do have some constraints that we're obligated to comply with. We have to ensure that any state or federal funding that we receive also improves not only the roadway surfaces, but the access for ADA and pedestrian access. So many times a project will not only include repaving a street, but fixing the curb ramps and sidewalks that are adjacent to it. Some of the major projects that we're currently working on that is taking staff time, that is the 5-year rate study for the coming water rates, that the current rate cycle will be up at the end of 2014, and we're beginning the process to review water rates and come to council with our recommendations for water rates for the next 5 years. We've got a water system that the City of Vallejo maintains up in Green Valley. It's called the Lakes Water System. We're working with that community to sell the Lakes Water System. It doesn't benefit the City of Vallejo. It benefits the the lake's customers, and we want to divest ourselves of that responsibility. We're also looking at Lake Curry and how to best utilize that asset. It used to be a water source for Vallejo. We don't use it anymore, and we're working on working with council to decide what to do with that. The downtown parking management plan, with the implementation of the Vallejo station and the adjacent surface parking lots, and the charging for parking in that area. We're also dealing with how to control and provide adequate parking in the downtown area. And that was a project that is recently gone to council, and we've been given direction on looking on ways to implement the enforcement of permit and on-street parking. We were recently, we've been working very hard to relocate the post office to further move along the waterfront development plan. I can tell you that we've made some major accomplishments in the last couple weeks to execute agreements with the post office, the U.S. Postal Service, to finalize the next steps in relocating the post office to allow us to develop that property. Working very closely with other departments on the demolition of the buildings on North Mare Island. Although there's a lot of buildings there and they look like they would be suitable for future development, they're very much deteriorated and they have a lot of environmental issues. So we're working closely with our funding partners and city staff to take down some of those buildings. Marina dredging is a big item. For economic viability, we have to be able to get boats in and out of the marina safely, and that's an ongoing project to remove the sediment that accumulates in the marina. A lot of permitting and regulatory requirements before we can go get that sediment out of there, and staff's working hard on that. That'll be a project that will be under construction this summer. And lastly, the tree ordinance. It probably doesn't sound like a big deal, but how we deal with trees within the city of Vallejo has been a convoluted process for many years, and we've set a goal that we're going to come up with a process that makes sense to the community and to the city staff so that we can clearly articulate what the rules and regulations are on dealing with trees and the effects that the trees have on both our infrastructure and private property. So that's, in an overview, some of the things we do in Public Works, and myself and the other two presenters are available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, try to keep your questions a little more general. If you have specific questions or even recommendations, we ask that you file those through the staff. The contact information is listed at the bottom of your agenda.
Good evening. My name is Roberto Cortez. I'm a budget delegate. This is a question for David. We have in the transportation and safety, we have about 10 different suggestions and all deal with street lighting. And I've seen some of the street lights have been changed to LED. Is that an ongoing project? Is it a one-time project? But we just don't want to utilize this process for something that is already going on.
Well, we are committed to convert all of our street lights to the LED technology. We have about 5,000 street lights. We've been able to convert about 1,500 of them, and it's a funding issue. LEDs are substantially less expensive to operate, and we are pushing this project and would like to see it completed as quickly as possible, because the money that we use to pay for electricity for streetlights is the same money that we can be using to fix our streets. So if we can convert the streetlights to more energy efficient, we have more money every single year that we can put into maintaining our streets. So it's a high priority for us, and we look forward to trying to secure the funding to allow us to finish that project.
Okay.
So I'm a budget delegate with the Arts and Community Group or Committee, but I have a question outside my domain, and that is, and I think it's for Gregory and maybe Chief Crines, and that is, I've been reading about software that I believe is used in Los Angeles and maybe other places that is predictive in terms of where people think crimes are likely to occur next. And I'm sure there's terminology that goes along with it. My questions would be, has the city looked at that, and is that something kind of that maybe could help the city and that PB could give a boost to? Thank you.
I'll start and let the chief jump in. Obviously, he is the eminent understanding of crime in the city. As far as technology goes, I know there's a few systems out there. Basically, it's analytics is what it's called. Ways to use the cameras or something to determine what's happening. Things like ShotSpotter, which is used in some places in the States where you hear a gunshot, the cameras turn on where that gunshot is. The issue we have are a lot of our areas, let's say the waterfront, we want to see people there. So what's my analytic? What's my trigger to say something bad is happening? It can't be that there's a person there because everyone there's people there. Even in front of, let's say liquor stores, technically, I mean, people are walking in and out. Now, if it's an area where there aren't a lot of people, places where people do dumping, we actually have cameras now that do analytics that 90% of the people aren't supposed to be there. So if I get some people there, flag it, we'll look, and odds are, especially at night on Mare Island, they're not supposed to be there. So we actually have that implemented right now. It was a police department and public works project that they put forth. But again, the issue is, what's the trigger? Right now, movement is an easy trigger. If I see movement, I'm going to record it. But that doesn't tell me there's a crime. So gunshots, if there's someone that's not supposed to be there, usually, and there's someone there, we can do that. The other triggers are more difficult. Chief, did you have anything else to add?
I will.
Perfect. Hope that answered your question.
I had two simple questions. One, to deal with the trees and whatnot. I'm Jerry Bordash, and I'm part of the delegate piece. On the tree issue, have you talked to or worked with the Forest Service on urban and community forestry? Because they're the experts in the field of how to deal with tree issues, and they sit right in Mare Island, and I work with them also, or for them. And so that might be a really good resource to use. I don't know if that's been something you've been doing. And then for the street lights, I was wondering if we have a priority list, and for those lights that surround parks, where they sit on it, is that available? Because I'm part of the parks group, Parks and Rec.
With the funding that we did have available, we focused on our major thoroughfares first. But I think that's a very good suggestion. If the delegates would propose a different priority list, parks, improving the lighting around our parks and areas where the citizens of Vallejo utilize, would be another alternative. But we are open to suggestions, and our goal is to complete the project, and however we get there would be fine with us.
Is there a priority list currently?
Again, internally we've developed that, and we have been addressing major thoroughfares first,
okay,
and going out towards the residential streets as money becomes available.
And on the tree part?
We have and will continue to interact with the Forest Service on ideas on how to best prevent and how to deal with tree issues within the city.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. We are down to our last two presenters. First, we have up our Acting Fire Chief, Mark Sharp, and then following him, we have our Police Chief, Joseph Crines.
Good evening, everyone. It is truly a pleasure to be able to stand before you this evening, and it's exciting for me because I'm a local resident of Vallejo. I was born and raised here, and it is exciting times now in the fire department. You know, the fire department is broken down into several different divisions. We have fire suppression. Fire suppression, those are the ones that respond to the 911 calls. We have fire training. That individual is responsible for all of the training that occurs in our department. And right now, within the last 3 years, we've hired 31 new employees. So about 40% of our department are new employees. So training is getting a lot of work right now. We also have fire prevention, and fire prevention works hand in hand with building officials, the planning. They work right down here at City Hall. They're responsible for all of the enforcement of codes as well as education, and then also just going around and making sure that all of the buildings that need to be inspected are inspected. Then we also have our EMS division, and that individual who's our EMS coordinator is responsible for making sure that all of our paramedics and EMTs within the department are operating under the proper protocols of the county. With all of that being said, we have had just an enormous turnover recently, but we have so many new employees that are excited about doing the work as a firefighter. Not only that, we also have some veterans that have also just regained that excitement that we had when we first started within the fire service, that somehow kind of got squashed just a little bit when times were a little bit leaner. When we came out of the bankruptcy, there was just a lot of things that needed to take place, and I'm so happy to say that we were able to get grants to hire a lot of our newer employees, which is a great thing because it didn't cost the city much in terms of an outlay of money to get these individuals hired. We've also had individuals who have retired, so some of those positions have been absorbed, the ones that started off with the grants, and that's been a great thing. The grants were through SAFER, they were federally funded, and we're actually, the last 4 classes that we hired were under those grants. Not only did were we able to hire individuals with the grants, but we also have been able to secure equipment that is much needed for the department. Things like voice activating units for improving communications on the fire ground. We were actually able to secure another grant just recently for what we call 4-gas monitors, and those are things that allow you to monitor the air so that it lets you know whether or not it's safe to breathe without self-contained breathing apparatuses. So all of these things have been just happening over the recent years or the recent months as well. And all of our employees are excited about the work that they're doing because we want to constantly provide effective and efficient services to the citizens of Vallejo. And as a result of that, we've had a lot of individuals who have taken on a lot of different responsibilities that go outside of the scope of just responding to emergency calls. We have individuals who are working along with Greg Taylor of the RIMS, some of the projects going on at PD. The RIMS is more or less, it's specifically for police, but it also has been patched in for fire. There have been a few little issues, but we've been able to work through it with the help of Greg and others. We have excellent staff that are working on those issues so that we are able to get dispatched in a timely way, know exactly where we're going, and then when we get there, we make it within that 7-minute response time 90% of the time, because that is directly tied to fees that we receive from Medic Ambulance, which is in the neighborhood of about $670,000. So it's real important that we're getting to the calls in that timely manner. So RIMS and all of the computer software that's been implemented is extremely important that we're able to work through those things. Not only that, we also have some other just projects that we're working on. One is the AED, which is the automatic external defibrillators. We have 23 located throughout the city. Some divisions are asking for more. What those will do is, in the event of an emergency, if someone had a cardiac event, they're really pretty self-explanatory. There's even some here at City Hall. And what they do is they walk you through the steps of how you can then help someone who may be having a cardiac event. The good thing about it, too, there's another program called Pulse Point, which allows you to download an app. And that app will then, if you subscribe to it, it will automatically dispatch you because it goes through the dispatch center, and it will ring to your phone, and it will let you know that someone is having a cardiac event in a public arena, and it will actually show you where the AED is located so that you can then get involved. And it's been very successful in other cities, and we're looking forward to getting involved with that ourselves. The things that I think, some of the gaps that we're really working on and things that I think are important for the PB is that within about a year or so, some of the SAFER grants will finally run out, and there will be a shortfall. We were able to open up Station 21, the engine company downtown, which was really important to us, and it was one of the goals, I believe, of the ad hoc, as well as I think it works hand in hand with the goals of the council. They want us to be able to improve our response times by 20%. Having Engine 21 down at Station 21 is really a critical part of that, because they're able to respond quicker than the larger truck. They have better maneuverability in some of the tighter areas of the downtown area. They can get onto Mare Island quicker than the truck can, because the further the distance out, the engine is a little bit quicker in its response. The critical thing that Engine 21 also does is it also provides water to the downtown area. We have a lot of historic buildings down here, older buildings, close set buildings, and we've had several fires recently. 135 Carolina, we've had 2 in the recent months, Georgia Street, and the fact that Engine 21 was downtown, we were able to get water, deploy hose line, and get the fire mitigated a lot quicker than if we had to wait for one of the other units from the outlying area to come to the downtown area. So Engine 21 will be one of those areas that we will hopefully be able to keep staffed when the federal funds run out. Some of the other things that we've been able to do, and we have grants right now working for our radio system. We are currently using 2 different types of radios, VHF and UHF, and basically that poses some problems for us when we have mutual aid companies coming in from outlying stations and outlying jurisdictions because of the nature of the emergency, because it's so big. We're now working on a $600,000 grant to get radios that will have both capacities, and we haven't gotten the word on it. If we're able to get it, the amount that will come from our budget will be minimal compared to the amount that it really costs for the radios. The other thing that we're also trying to get are 2 Type 2, 2 Type 3 fire apparatus, which gives us off-road capabilities. We have to respond in to some outlining areas where there's wildlands, and then also when there are larger state fires, we also have an obligation to respond. That will give us the capacity to do that a lot better than what we do. Just in closing, just some of the things, again, that we're working on to provide better services to the citizens of Vallejo. Besides the AED program, we're also looking at opening and really getting our Emergency Operations Center fully functioning. We've been sending employees down to a training session down in San Luis Obispo, and we're sending police, we're sending public works, engineering department. I'm coordinating with GVRD, the school district, to make sure that we get all the agencies down there, because when you have a large emergency, an earthquake or anything that creates a big havoc on your city, it's real important that everyone has the ability to be able to work in that Emergency Operations Center to make sure that you can get that situation mitigated. In fact, if you don't have it operational and you don't have your personnel trained, when it comes back time to recuperate the funds that you have lost or expended in order to correct it, you don't get them back from the federal government if you have not operated in accordance with the laws that have been set up. So we're in the process of working on that now, and it's a huge task, and hopefully we'll be able to hire with this next fiscal budget an emergency service manager who will be able to staff and to work that project, because it's a huge project. But it's something that we're very we're focused on it, and we need to make sure that it happens. What they've been able to determine is if you haven't worked it out well and you are behind the 8 ball, if you have that emergency, the next 3, 4, 5 years, your city focuses on nothing but emergency planning because you didn't do it in the forefront. So we're trying to pre-plan and make sure that we're ready for that. We, again, are really working on just many projects, smoke detector programs for senior citizens over 65 that own their home, that are on fixed incomes. We're working on also the CERT program. We've trained hundreds of people, but we want to go back through and retrain them or just give them updated completed training, because the other thing, when an emergency occurs, you don't have enough staff to get the job done. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we have citizens who are available to help out. We're also integrating with the Red Cross and other nonprofit organizations to make sure that they can assist us as well as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up, I'm going to do a quick plug for David Kleinschmidt, the Public Works Director, or Public Works Department. If you guys have not seen or utilized See-Click-Fix, I highly recommend using it. There are links from the city's homepage, as long as a ton of other links throughout the Public Works Department, et cetera. So definitely get your projects up there, illegal dumping and other types of things. All right, Chief Crines.
Thank you. Good evening. You still with me? Why do they have me follow the fire guy? Seriously. Everybody loves the fireman. Everybody waves to the fireman. And when they do, they use all 5 fingers. Okay. That's a tough act to follow. Thank you, Mark. All right, so in police, we're the department, by the way, that packs 10 pounds of service into a 5-pound bag. Yes, we're staff challenged, we are resource challenged, we are equipment challenged, we are technology challenged. We are all of those things, but we are doing extraordinary things with what we have, and we will continue to do that. I want to thank Greg for already doing my presentation. I could just open it up to questions right now, but I'll tell you a couple of things that are going on. One of the issues came up about volunteers. We extensively use volunteers. In fact, we have more than 35 very active volunteers. One of the ways we get our volunteers in this community is we host a Citizens Police Academy. And no, it's not going to like the regular police academy. It's like going to classroom training. And in fact, we will sponsor our next Citizens Police Academy here in Vallejo in July 17th, I believe. And it's about a 10-week program, and you go into the classroom for about 3 hours a night for 10 weeks. And if you've never done it, I highly recommend it. But it's one of the paths to get in to becoming a volunteer in the police department. It is an outstanding program. You will learn the A's to Z's, everything you ever wanted to know about policing, law enforcement, criminal justice system. It is really a cool program. I've never had anybody go through a Citizens Academy anywhere that didn't enjoy it. You have to give up like Ricky Lake for a few hours, but it'll be worth the time. We're also doing our next open house on September the 6th. So that'll be a great opportunity for everybody to come in, take a look at what we do, how we do it. We'll roll out a lot of the equipment. Just like the fire department, we have a lot of special vehicles, a lot of special needs related to vehicles. We have surveillance vehicles. We have vehicles for our hostage negotiations team, vehicles for our special weapons and tactics team, vehicles for our mobile field force, which is a team that responds out and assists other agencies, as well as responding to disaster preparedness and emergencies in our own city. And we have special vehicles for that. We have leveraged grants like you cannot believe. And in fact, we have just obtain some specialized vehicles, a rescue vehicle that will help us in the event of active shooter situations, hostage negotiation situations, barricaded subjects, and that sort of thing. And it'll be able to deliver our personnel to a scene safely and not only get them there safely, but if there are folks that need to be rescued, it'll allow us to get them out of there safely. So we just have one vehicle donated by the military. That vehicle in and of itself was worth almost $1 million. For the one vehicle. So we've really leveraged a lot of grants. We leveraged state grants for traffic safety and for traffic programs to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And in fact, over the last 5 years or so, more than $1 million worth of traffic safety grants that we have leveraged. We leverage state grants for technology, and we use a lot of our grants for technology purposes, including most recently, I hadn't even told the city manager this, we just leveraged an additional $500,000 from the state of California for our E911, that's our emergency 911 system, so that when you call in, we make sure that the equipment works, that we actually answer the phone and we can talk to you, not voice over IP, actual real solid lines where we can talk to you and deliver services to Vallejo. So $500,000 is coming in to upgrade that equipment, and it needs to be upgraded about every 5 years or so. We're upgrading workstations. They said you cannot put lipstick on a pig. Well, we're trying. We have a building that's over 50 years old. We repainted that building thanks to Public Works. We have recarpeted that building. We have replaced workstations in that building. We're trying to make that environment a little more user-friendly for our staff and to give them a place that they can be proud of and give them a place where they can come and actually be productive. You know, when it comes to technology, there's good technology and there's not so good technology. There's technology that, you know, my criteria for it is it has to allow us to work smarter. It has to allow us to be more efficient. It has to allow us to be more effective in what we do. And so not all technology that comes our way is going to be useful. And you brought up the question in regards to intelligence-based policing or analytic policing, and it's great. In fact, I spent some time recently with Stockton, with Sacramento in regards to intelligence-based policing and doing some crime analysis, and particularly related to our gang problems and our gang issues. That's the good side, is you can actually do some predictive policing. The downside is you still need people. You need people to analyze it. You need people to input the information. You need people to extract the information, and then you need people to develop a target action plan as to how you're going to utilize that information. But nevertheless, there are some great tools out there. Greg mentioned the ShotSpotter tool, which is a gunfire locator, and it's a locator that's currently being used in a neighboring jurisdiction over here in Richmond very successfully. Oakland uses it. Well, they use it. I won't go there. But anyway, it is interesting technology because it can specifically locate where gunfire is coming from. And unfortunately, we've had our share of that here in this community, and it can be very useful. David and Greg had talked a little bit about the automated license plate readers. This is outstanding technology because it can be used mobily and it can be used as a fixed location. At a fixed location, we can literally track every license plate of every vehicle that's going by a particular spot, and there's some great locations in the city we can use that. That can be used for crime analysis. That can be used for after the fact investigation in regards to crimes that may have occurred. That can be used for parking enforcement and more efficient and smarter parking enforcement as we drive through lots or we drive through areas. And because you literally drive through, it records every single license plate, knows how long that vehicle's been there, come back 2 hours later, and if it's necessary to do enforcement or issue a citation, you can do that without going out and physically marking every vehicle that was there. So there's a lot of great technology out there, and particularly related to traffic. There is crime scene mapping technology that is out there that uses lasers to really hone in on very specific issues related to crime scene and the mapping of crime scene, and that assists us in gathering evidence at crime scene that's really critical related to prosecutions down the road. And that technology is not cheap, like all technology. You know, there comes a price. The technology for that crime scene mapping and traffic scene mapping, I mean, it was originally developed for traffic investigations. It runs about $150,000 for one system. So, you know, there's some great systems out there, and it's just finding the right resources to go ahead and do those projects. We invest a tremendous amount of time and effort and energy and cost into training. And training our officers. We spent over 7,500 hours last year invested in training of our police officers. We invested $200,000 last year in purchasing a decision-based use of force and firearm simulator. And you say, well, you know, why is a simulator better than live fire, you know, training? And the reason it's better is because it's decision-based, because it creates scenarios in regards to shoot and don't shoot scenarios. It creates scenarios that force officers to think, that force them to use decisions in regards to using verbal commands. It forces them into decision-makings in regards to other defensive tools rather than a firearm. And so it allows them to be a lot smarter, and it allows them to learn from their mistakes in a very safe environment. We share that technology with the Fairfield Police Department. We share a training center with the Fairfield Police Department. They have literally a state-of-the-art training facility that we utilize quite frequently. And one of the things that we are in need of in regards to that particular facility is driving simulators. Driving is one of the biggest liability issues for us, and our officers are on the road 24/7, right? And we put a lot of time on the road, but it's important to make sure that we're dealing with risk management issues, that we're giving our officers the best training that we can, and we can give them training on the road, but training in the simulator is a lot less expensive and it's a lot more efficient. So those are some of the other things that we're working on currently. Greg talked about our CAD and RMS, the computer-aided dispatch, as well as the records management, which then relates back to our report writing. Every piece of information that comes into the police department and ultimately goes out of the police department goes through our records management system, and we leveraged a lot of technology monies to build that system. In fact, just this past year alone, the city of Vallejo invested more than $2 million in public safety just in regards to our information infrastructure. In regards to the public safety building, I talked about, you know, some of the things that we've upgraded, but some of the other needs have to do with a locker room facility and a shower room facility in a building that's more than 50 years old. And in addition to that, a training facility. You may or may not know, we have an off-site training facility here in Vallejo over on Mare Island that we use. We have our Citizens Academy out there. We train our police cadets out there. We do other defensive tactics training out there, but it's in sad need of some upgrades, and it would probably take anywhere from about $250,000 to $500,000 to truly upgrade that training facility to make sure that we're utilizing it the best way we can. So those are just some of the things that are going on, and obviously happy to answer questions.
Thank you. So that wraps up the presentations. So we have about 15 minutes left for questions. So let's jump right to it.
It actually addresses fire and police. Are you having fire prevention and crime prevention in the schools for the youth?
That is one of the projects that we have a results-based project that we're doing at the staff level. And one of the things that I wanted to do is get us back into the schools. In fact, I've had 2 canceled meetings with Dr. Bishop, and we're scheduled to meet again on the 25th because I want to start a project that will allow us to adopt a school. And I'll have each engine company adopt a school, and then they will start doing those types of things. Fire prevention, we want to get them back in. Prior to that, our fire prevention staff would normally do it, but we just don't have enough staffing in order to be able to get that accomplished. So we're going to try to get it out there with the engine companies as well.
That's wonderful. I know it worked when I was little. Scared me. No, just kidding.
The short answer for us is no. No, I mean, it's no crime prevention going on in the schools. In fact, we virtually eliminated everything related to crime prevention when we cut about 45% of the staffing in the police department. We are slowly building that back up. Some of you are familiar with our community services section, and we've been getting back out with community meetings, neighborhood watch meetings, crime prevention meetings, and we're slowly building that back out. At one time, we had a significant cadre of school resource officers in the schools, and today we simply don't have the staffing to support that.
Maybe we can intertwine the community service for the youth if they do something wrong, and then maybe get them to see what the consequences are when you do break the law.
We're actually looking into a youth court here in Vallejo right now.
That'd be great. Thank you.
The chief mentions the community services section. I want to do a quick plug for Nextdoor. The city supports Nextdoor. We have several departments that are on Nextdoor, and I want to be a part of a dialogue. So I just want to throw that out there. There's a link also on the city's homepage.
Good evening. My name is Tom Wiggins. I live here in Vallejo. I'm a naval immigrant. I've been here about 35 years now. Is Vallejo still a parole dump? I mean, I figure that might relate to crime issues, you know?
We have our share of parolees and probationers in Vallejo. With the advent of AB 109, which is the realignment in the state of California that takes folks out of state prison, shifts them over to local jails, to the county jail, and then shifts them out into local communities. We have the highest population ourselves in Fairfield in this county.
Was the $1.50 really necessary? I would think that money could have been better spent on solar panels.
I'm sorry, was the what necessary?
The armored personnel carrier, $1.50.
Okay, well, a personnel carrier that will allow us to get to a scene safely when somebody's shooting at us or somebody's shooting at you,
okay.
Yeah, that's necessary.
I didn't think there was that much going on here, but okay.
Hi, I'm Jerry Bordash again, and I'd like to ask a question about the parks at risk. Do we have any kind of crime statistics or analysis on parks that aren't being utilized due to the crime statistics and that kind of a thing, so we could maybe prioritize some of the lighting issues dealing with parks so we actually get kids outside and active?
We don't have any specific information related to parks and crimes in or around parks per se. It's something that you could certainly research if we felt there was an issue in a particular park. We do look at lighting issues from time to time. We have removed numerous homeless encampments in and around parks in Vallejo, particularly over this past year, because there have been a lot of safety and health and safety issues related to some of the encampments. But as far as other crime issues and whatnot, we don't track that specifically in regards to crime statistics.
Hello, my name is Lisa Kelly, and I'm with the a delegate for the Parks and Recreation. And my question is for the police chief. You mentioned that you're utilizing citizens, police training, and the academy. When those, after the 10-week program, will they be utilized for services within Parks and Recreation? I mean, what are they, who are they, what do they do?
I know that we don't have enough time to talk about what they do, but they do all sorts of things within the police department. They don't go out into the don't go out into parks. Okay. They may direct traffic if we need them to direct traffic. They may be at a large scene in a special event. They do data entry for us. Okay. They manage crime statistical information. They input information for us. They do all sorts of clerical work for us. And there's there's probably about 35 different job tasks that we have them do specifically for the police department.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great. I think that was the last question. So thank you again for coming out, and for those of you that asked good questions, please remember to filter your questions through the staff that are listed on the bottom of the agenda and or through your facilitators. Also, please remember that next Wednesday, April 23rd at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers, we will be hosting the briefings for city agencies, or non-city agencies, pardon me. So that includes the Greater Vallejo Recreation District, Vallejo City Unified School District, and several more. So that closes our evening, and thank you again so much for participating.